Claris,
Here.
Mr. Bailey, Mr. Camiso, Mr. Conti, Ms. O'Shea,
Here.
Ms. Fahey, Mr. Flynn, Ms. Golby,
Here.
Mr. Herron, Mr. Igo. He's here. Mr. Kimbrough, Ms. Cornegay, Mr. Crasher,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. Robinson. There's 13 present, 2 absent.
Going to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mr. Jack Flynn, and followed by a moment of silence, please. I don't know, did I skip someone? Don't want to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Fahey, we will ask you to lead us in the pledge tonight. Thank you. Again, we want to welcome you all to our meeting tonight. I believe we have 4 members of the public signed up to speak during our public comment period, where they have up to 5 minutes to speak on a subject of their choice. I'm going to speak on the subject of my choice right now. The Pledge of Allegiance, I have a nephew who is 8 years old. And he went to school and told the teacher he didn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And they asked him why. He said, because there's too much going on in the world, and I just really don't feel comfortable. 8 years old. And they honored his request. And he had to come home and tell his mother. And he was able to explain why he didn't want to do it. And he did. And he didn't want to even stand up, but he did concede and decided he will stand, but he just will not say the Pledge of Allegiance. So what I'm trying to tell you is, the point is, we're teaching people by how we act to be critical thinkers and be independent thinkers. And I really don't know where he got that kind of thinking from, but apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. But I'm just impressed with him. I mean, I still say the Pledge of Allegiance, but to have somebody 8 years old decide that he's reading enough and watching enough, and I'm sure that the football player had something to do with it as well. But at the same time, children are watching what we do, and that's just my public comment for tonight. I think I stayed within the 5 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to ask you to please call our first speaker.
Dennis Carriers.
All right, testing, 1, 2.
Testing.
Okay, this is better. Okay, good. My name's Dennis Carius. We have been doing a show every week on the public access show, and we heard that the 3 channels, 16, 17, and 18, might be going in a bad direction, and some of us are here to just ask if those 3 channels could go in a good direction, because if this was like 30, 40 years ago, I understand when people only had, 13 or 20 channels, but there are so many channels out there right now that there's no reason not to keep 16, 17, and 18 the way they've been for years or for decades, because it's something that we would really like to continue with, and we're just asking if you can help us do that and not go in a bad direction. There's really no need to go in a bad direction and get rid of those channels. I mean, not just public access, but even education, and government. If there's a very interesting meeting going on, let's say the Common Council is having a very, very interesting meeting on a topic that the whole city of Albany is interested in, well, there's not enough room in a room like this for everybody to come in. But if you kept that government channel, then they could just be at home, turn on that channel, and watch that meeting. So it's not just government and education, but we the people are asking if you would just keep public access the way it was, going in a good direction, and instead of getting one coordinator, you really do have the money to have two coordinators, instead of having him just 12 months, and then he either stays or he leaves, and this channel goes down for months. You could have two coordinators starting 6 months apart. One starts next month, and one starts 6 months later, so that when that 12 months is over with, then that other one is going to be here for 6 more months. And then if for any reason someone leaves, like Jake did, and the channel is down for months, that second coordinator would still have the studio open for that 6 months more, and hopefully would even work more. If he could work more than the hours he's been working, then things would be going perfectly. So I'm just asking, instead of one coordinator for 12 months, why can't we have two coordinators 6 months apart? Thank you. If there's any questions, please just let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Carius. That's a great suggestion. Our next speaker?
Nancy Benedict.
My name is Nancy Benedict. I live at 31 Forest Road in Delmar. I have addressed this group several times regarding Channel Albany. There are still no programs being made in the Channel Albany studio. There have been very few new programs made for Channel Albany since the studio closed at the end of May. There was one new program that was shown on Channel Albany that was obviously made in Schenectady and had a big sign in back of the speakers that read OSM State Street Studio. And there were one or two that were made outside of any studio, but very few new shows. Much of the programming that has been on Channel Albany recently is quite old, some of it going back to 2016. Now, the studio closed after the last day of May. It was closed in June, July, August, and well, it will definitely be closed for all of September, and it looks like it's going to be closed for all of October, too. Because what I was told was that you're planning to have a meeting of the ad hoc committee of, the Common Council ad hoc committee with the PEG Oversight Committee, but I'm told that the members of the Oversight Committee and the ad hoc committee got letters giving a list of dates and asking which dates are good for them, but all those dates were from the middle of October to the end of October, basically. So obviously you don't seem to be planning to open it in October. And I think since they haven't advertised for the position, well, it was my understanding that they were going to advertise again for the position, because the last time they only had two people who were interested, and one of them dropped out after the interview. So I have heard that they are planning to advertise the position again. And so that's going to take a couple months more. It could be November, December, January. I don't know when the studio reopens, and I think this is terrible. This is a resource that's not being used. And I'm told that that there is an issue of people not having signed an oath, but I have also been told that that oath is not absolutely necessary. So please try to get Channel Albany going again. Because this is a resource, a good resource that's just not being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Next speaker, please.
Lana Klein.
Good to see you, Alana.
Good to see you, Council President. Good evening, Madam President and members of the Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. In previous weeks, I've come to you with impassioned, emotional pleas. You may have seen me hold back tears. You may have heard me choke back emotion. While I was thrilled that the Council unanimously passed Councilwoman Flair's resolution on September 7th, I still had a dose of reality served to me. I was pumped when I left that meeting. This was huge. Oh, I'm sorry. I was pumped when I left that meeting. This was huge. Another level of police accountability. I told a few friends who were all excited at the progress, except for one friend. He was immediately skeptical of how the process would be enforced and if cops would actually comply. In case you haven't figured it out, I'll drop a spoiler alert. My friends who were excited about this were white. My friend who was skeptical is black. Funny how that works, right? In spite of coming in front of this council numerous times in the name of Black Lives Matter, I am still realizing learning about my privilege. One law in one city, in one state, cannot possibly make up for 450 years of oppression in this country. I'm a big football fan. I know that after a victory, such as passing this resolution, that it is important to take a moment to celebrate the win. However, it is more important to realize that this one victory was not the end game. There is always another challenge. There is always room for improvement. There is an inherent distrust of law enforcement in minority and especially black communities due to systemic racial profiling and police brutality, even if those issues are not as prevalent, as pervasive, or as blatant in our city. We must continue to push forward with efforts to increase community policing and gaining trust. While these individuals are law enforcement officers, they are first and foremost public servants. A Chinese philosopher by the name of Lao Tzu once said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I hope this law was that step and the journey goes far beyond 1,000 miles. I feel now is also an appropriate time to speak some more on behalf of what first brought me in front of this council, which was to have Albany officially recognize a Black Lives Matter Day on July 17th, the anniversary of Eric Gardner's death in New York City. I realize that the phrase Black Lives Matter seems to be a divisive issue. In reality, this movement is about equality. It's simply stating what should be obvious, that black lives do indeed matter. Black Lives Matter came about because of unnecessary, brutal, and oftentimes deadly violence at the hands of police. It came about because of unjustifiable double standards in the criminal justice system, such as the results of the trials of George Zimmerman and Marissa Alexander. Both defendants pled not guilty in their respective cases, citing Florida's stand your ground law. Zimmerman, who shot and killed Trayvon Martin, a black teenager, was acquitted. Alexander, a black woman who fired a warning shot at her boyfriend because she feared domestic abuse, was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years, though that sentence was later reduced. It came about because of racist policies that disproportionately affect black people, such as stop and frisk, mandatory minimums, and severe penalties for low-level, nonviolent drug offenses. It came about because black people are arrested with their only charge being resisting arrest. Black Lives Matter is not anti-cop. It simply advocates for our need to recognize the way we police our neighborhoods needs to change. Black Lives Matter is not anti-white. It simply asks us to realize that our society has a double standard of how people are treated and that this is because of the color of someone's skin. Recently, a white woman from Australia was shot and killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The stories about her were about how she was engaged and moved to America to be with her, quote, rock star boyfriend. These stories were all accompanied by studio-esque pictures of a happy, smiling young woman. People were quick to tell stories about the grieving fiancé. Meanwhile, when an unarmed black person is killed by the police, irrelevant criminal history is presented in the story next to a mugshot-esque picture. Black Lives Matter is not pro-black supremacy. If black people were not jailed disproportionately compared to white people, this movement likely would not exist. If justice was served when a black person was killed by police, this movement would likely not exist. But that's not the world we live in. It happens every time, despite witnesses, despite dash cams, despite body cams, despite cell phone video, not guilty, every time. The problem with Blue Lives Matter is that no one is disputing that cops' lives matter, particularly not the justice system. If an officer of the law is wounded or killed in the line of duty, justice is always served. The problem with All Lives Matter is that it only came about after the fact. It was created to silence the voices saying that Black Lives Matter and ignore the fact that we have a systemic problem. If someone told me, support our troops, and I responded, All Lives Matter, I would be called anti-service member and told that I was missing the point. If I went into a breast cancer fundraiser and ripped down all the pink stuff because people were dying of lung cancer, I would be told that this organization's primary focus is breast cancer, and once we find a cure for that cancer, we might find a cure for other cancers. So I ask you, why is it seemingly acceptable to do the same exact thing in this case? I saw a great way of putting this into perspective recently on Twitter. Yes, it's true. All lives do matter. But until mine matters as much as yours, I'm going to be specific. I sincerely hope I have your support on this matter. Thank you.
Vincent Ragusa.
Good evening. My name is Vincent Ragusa. I live at 13 Beach Avenue, Albany, New York. I'm here tonight to talk about Ordinance 40.91.17A. And the ordinance is authorizing and directing the conveyance of all the rights, titles, and interests of the city of Albany into certain properties located in the town of Queens, New York, at a private sale to C&M Recycling, LLC, and I believe there's a word missing. It should say waste. That's what it said in the newspaper. I just can't, there's so many things that I feel after reading this 2 or 3 times that I feel that this is not a kosher ordinance. If you look at the way it reads, it says a private sale. Now, why would you want to have a private sale to CM Enterprise when you'd never know the true value of that land, because you only have one seller or one buyer? But if I had a public sale, I would get numerous people that were interested. I would get, as you know, I would get the DEC who was looking at the property and had an assessed value of $620,000 on it. They would be able to bid. So if I only got one person to bid on the property, so be it. I had a public sale. Secondly, I don't know how we can sell 363 acres, the city, that you don't own. The taxpayer owned it. We paid $5.2 million with taxpayer money when we purchased it, and now we get to sell it. But it should be on the November ballot stating and asking the public or the taxpayers in the city of Albany to either vote for this or not, say yes or no, that you want to sell it at a public auction, not a private one, a public one. I don't understand why, let's forget about the C&M Recycling, who it is, it's Carver, and nobody knows Carver. I know a lot about him, but again, Carver has a thing going down in Queens, and why would he want to buy 363 acres that was doomed, most of it was doomed by the DEC, that it's all wetland? And what DEC was going to do, if they were to buy it, they were going to keep it forever wild, which it should be. But why is Carver going to buy it? Doesn't anybody ask that question? Why would you want to buy 363 acres of land when a good percentage of it is useless? Useless. There's even a stream running through it. But you almost have to wonder, is there some other kind of deal in the works that I don't know about? Like possibly, will Carver get the first shot when the city of Albany is looking for someone to collect our waste and haul our waste? Is there a deal to buy the land and they're gonna collect it and then they're gonna bring it down to Queens and have a transfer station and either ship it to an unknown location or put some type of a biosolial plant there? So what are we doing if he does that? We're theoretically eliminating the Port of Albany. What is the Port of Albany? Does Port of Albany have anything in the works? Keep in mind that the city and the port did a $50,000 study on the landfill and what would happen when we close. I think we all forgot that. So, you know, they're the questions that I think everyone here has to have an answer to. And I just can't see that we can vote, and that you can put this here, we can put an ordinance in. I think, first and foremost, it should go on the ballot in November. Asking the citizens of the city of Albany, do you want to sell it or don't you want to sell it? And how do you want to sell it? Do you want to sell it at a private sale or do you want to sell it at a public sale? I can't believe that we can do an ordinance that where they just want to do a private auction. Another thing I want to point out in this ordinance that was brought up is that where it said here, and I don't understand this, but I want to put it out there, that it said here, to authorize the sale is to authorize the sale of something about the land. Oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Determine that the aforesaid property has been abandoned for municipal or public purposes. Well, if that's so, how is DEC so interested in the property? Keep in mind that they're looking at this property. So I can't see why we would want to sell it before DEC come back with something and said, I'll give you X number of dollars, Carter is going to give you X number of dollars, and we take the better of the two deal. The other thing is, I want to say something off the subject here. Carolyn, you spoke at my Eagle Hill neighborhood meeting a couple of years ago, and at that meeting, you discussed public access TV and how you would utilize public access TV and how you would bring in people, you would interview them, and let the city of, residents of the city of Albany know what was happening in City Hall. Well, it's been approximately 2 years, and we still have no public access TV. We still don't have it. The other thing, Carolyn, at the end of the primary, they interviewed you, and you made a quote of the day. I would like to repeat it. These are your words. This city needs a lot of help. And as Caesar said, as it is said, let it be written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ragusa. And I do want to clarify one thing. DEC has us, I'm sorry, the static here. In the title, yes. Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Ragusa was our last speaker. We want to thank everyone for participating in our public comment period, and we always look forward to you being here. Let's see, so now we will move on to approval of minutes from our previous meeting. Mr. Conti. Is there a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. I don't know how to turn this thing down. Mr. Conti. Thank you. Do we have any reports of standing committees at this time? Mr. Igo. Thank you. Mr. Herring.
Yes, Madam President, the Planning Committee will meet September 27th after caucus for the purpose of hearing the presentation of the annual presentation of the IDA to the Common Council.
Thank you. Dr. Pliers.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to provide some updates regarding PEG, in particular, some of the work that has been done and an upcoming meeting. So the ad hoc committee will be hosting a meeting in October. The purpose of that meeting is to discuss the reappointments for the council appointees. Just want to clarify that the Corp Council did inform us probably a month ago that because all of the council appointees did not sign their oath of office, by law, technically, they are no longer members of the committee, the board, and so as a result, they all have to be reappointed. And so the purpose of the meeting that we're hosting in October is to discuss individual reappointments for each of the council appointees, but also to discuss some issues and concerns that have been brought up by board members, and also to discuss solutions. It is no secret that there have been a lot of challenges with the PEG work, and so the committee, ad hoc committee, will be meeting with board members to discuss what we need to do to improve some of the challenges in addition to the reappointments. I also want to point out that some of the work that's being done to improve accountability and transparency to the public. We are increasing the number of volunteers that we have with recording. So Javaris Little, who is back here, has graciously agreed to join our cadre of volunteers to record our meetings, in addition to Keith Irish. Also, I've had several conversations with the mayor's office about our governmental meetings being accessible on YouTube. And so after this meeting, the recording will be uploaded to YouTube so that the public will have access. So the plan moving forward to ensure that residents can have access and view our meetings is that a YouTube account has already been set up, and our governmental meetings will be uploaded to the YouTube account. And that way, as was commented on by some of the members of the public, residents can view from their home our governmental meetings. This will not take the place of the channels, as the board still has work to do in that regard, but in terms of the governmental meetings, we have in our purview an obligation to make sure meetings are accessible, and so myself and other members of the ad hoc committee are working to ensure that our meetings are up and available to the public. More to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll now move on to consideration of ordinances. I'm sorry. Mr. Herring.
Yes, Madam President, I notice ordinance 39.82.17 for the purpose of introduction.
Thank you very much. Please read the title.
An ordinance authorizing a right-of-way franchise with Excellent Systems Incorporated for installation of telecommunications equipment.
Mr. Conti?
Madam President, that is referred to the planning committee.
Next, Mr. Conti?
Madam President, I ask majority consent to add ordinance 40.91.17 to tonight's agenda for introduction.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. O'Brien?
Thank you. I notice ordinance number 409117 for purposes of introduction.
Clerk, please read the title.
An ordinance authorizing and directing the conveyance of all the right, title, and interest of the city of Albany in and to certain properties located in the town of Queens, New York, at private sale to CM Recycling LLC.
Thank you very much. We will now move to consideration of resolutions the rest of the ordinances. Thank you. Resolutions introduced, Ms. Doshate.
Thank you, Madam President. I notice Resolution 53.92.17R for introduction and ask for a roll call vote and passage.
Clerk, please read the title.
Resolution of the Common Council resolved, the City of Albany hereby certifies pursuant to New York State Real Property Law, Section 1903, the attached applicable homestead and non-homestead base proportions or adjusted homestead and non-homestead base proportions for the 2016 tax year.
So the resolution should read the 2016 tax year, 2017 tax year. The one that was handed out should say that. I don't know if Mr. Campbell got one of those. Okay, is there any discussion? If not, I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Ms. Claris,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey, Mr. Camiso, Mr. Conti, Mr. O'Shea,
Yes.
Ms. Fahey, Mr. Flynn, Ms. Golby,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Igo, Ms. Cornigan,
Yes.
Mr. Crasher,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
That's 13 affirmative.
Passes. We'll move on to Ms. Golby.
Thank you, Madam President. I notice Resolution 549217R for introduction and ask for its passage on a roll call vote thereon.
Clerk, please read the title.
Resolution of the Common Council authorizing the city's participation on the Capital District Urban Technical Search and Rescue Team.
Is there any discussion? If not, do a voice vote. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Madam President, I'm sorry, I'd like to co-sponsor.
Any other co-sponsors? Okay, did you get all the co-sponsors? Please, okay. All right. And I said all in favor, right? Yes, I did. Okay. Thank you very much. The resolution passes. Mr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam President, for making resolutions on tonight's agenda.
Okay, Mr. Herring, for miscellaneous business. Is this week's? Yeah.
Madam President, before me, I notice that the Commissioner of Deeds, I ask for its passage and request a waiving of the reading of the names.
Thank you. Clerk, please read the title.
Resolved that the following persons be and are hereby appointed Commissioner of Deeds for the City of Albany, New York, for the term ending December 13, 2018, and
All those in favor? Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. The resolution passes. And Mr. Conti. Second. All those in favor, have a good evening. Thank you.